It's finally Friday.
It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
All right, welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by Woodbine Racetrack. I'm Scott Jagow in studio, along with Ray Paulick, who is already at Del Mar, the host of the Breeders' Cup World Championships. Can you believe it? 1 week from today. Ray, it's always an exciting time of the year for the thoroughbred racing industry, but it's particularly special when you have a track that hasn't hosted the Breeders' Cup before, and it happens to be where the turf meets the surf on the Pacific Ocean. It can't get much better than that. I know you're excited. So let's talk about the storylines heading into this special Breeders' Cup. What would you consider the top story?
Well, aside from the fact that this is the first Breeders' Cup to be run at Del Mar, when I look at the pre-entries, to me, the big story is Bob Baffert in the Classic. He's won the last 3 Classics, and he's got a strong hand in this year's Classic with the defending champion Arrogate, the up-and-coming 3-year-old West Coast. And to me, all he's got to do is beat Gunrunner. I think the field is Baffert, Gunrunner, and the rest of them. Unfortunately, they're not going to be coupled in the wagering. But to me, this is the big story. Can Bob Baffert win his 4th consecutive Breeders' Cup Classic? I mean, that is an amazing accomplishment if he can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Arrogate, beat Gunrunner in the Dubai World Cup earlier this year. Arrogate since then hasn't been so great, and Gunrunner has. So it will be interesting to see where they are crossing paths again. I mean, that's obviously the big story. And like you said, whether Baffert can win a 4th straight Classic. I thought it was interesting this week on the teleconference. Steve Asmussen was asked about Baffert having so many horses in the Classic. And he said that he would have jockey Florent Giroux watch the Awesome Again Stakes, where Shared Belief was kind of kept outside by another Baffert horse, and there was talk of that being shenanigans. I thought it was amusing. He said, "Yeah, I'm going to have Florent watch that a few times."
They wouldn't dare pull any sort of shenanigans in a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic, like taking a left-hand turn out of the starting gate to wipe out the opposition or anything like that. No, they wouldn't do. No. But it's interesting you bring up Gunrunner. Bob Baffert was asked about Arrogate and whether or not the trip to Dubai took a lot out of the horse, and maybe he's just not the same. And he made a very, very interesting comment. He says, "Well, it didn't seem to take much out of Gunrunner, did it?" So Gunrunner has moved up since then. Arrogate has moved back. We'll see if he can regain his luster.
Another big story is Lady Eli. The filly and mare turf is going to be her last race, and she has had such a remarkable career when you consider first her greatness, secondly, obviously, the story of her laminitis, her recovery from it, which is so difficult to do, and then to come back at the same level and compete and win. It's just unbelievable. Everybody's going to be pulling for Lady Eli.
Well, this is no gimme. And I'm sure the connections of Lady Eli look at everything as gravy. Just the fact that she survived what she went through. But this is a tough race. These are very good fillies. Chad Brown's got, I think, 3 in this race. The thing I find interesting really about the filly and mare turf is how did they end up at 1 1/8? This is a race that's been run usually at 1 1/4 or 1 3/8. This is the first time they've run it at this distance. And I think this 1 1/8 distance will help Lady Eli depending on post position. To me, when they come out of that chute onto the main course at the 1 1/8 distance, if you're on the outside, it can really compromise your chances. It's a tough distance. I would have preferred to have seen the race at 1 3/8. The male turf race is at 1 1/2.
Yeah, the defending champion in this race is back, Queen's Trust. The interesting thing about her is she's 1 for 12 in her career. She's only won 1 race when she nosed out Lady Eli last year in the filly and mare turf. But she is back to defend her crown. Okay, what's another story?
The Distaff. Last year, it was just a sensational race. Beholder going out with a victory at the narrowest of margins over Songbird. This year, Songbird is gone. Beholder's in the breeding shed. But we've got a tremendous field with Stellar Wind, the former champion, Forever Unbridled, who beat Songbird at Saratoga, and then 3-year-olds, Abel Tasman, Elate, and Paradise Woods. But there's a really interesting number when I look at all of these fillies, and that is 0 for 39. That is John Sadler's Breeders' Cup record. No trainer has started that many horses and never won. So Sadler is either jinxed or way, way overdue to win a Breeders' Cup race.
Yeah, he does have another opportunity with a favorite, a tepid favorite, Accelerate in the Dirt Mile. So he's got a couple of chances. Yeah, how can you top last year's Distaff? Well, just look at the field for this year's Distaff. Last year it was kind of tete-a-tete, but this year it's 5 deep at least. So yeah, that's got to rank up there as going to be one barn burner of a race.
And I talked about Sadler's 0 for 39. Another trainer in the race has one of the best Breeders' Cup records, and that's Richard Mandela, who's won 9 Breeders' Cup races from just 40 starters. He's got Paradise Woods in here.
Another story is, frankly, just Del Mar hosting the Breeders' Cup. A couple years ago, Keeneland got the Breeders' Cup for the first time, and there was some trepidation about it. There were concerns about traffic and just the size of the venue, whether it would be suitable for a Breeders' Cup. And afterwards, I think almost everyone agreed that it was a phenomenal event and that Keeneland did a fantastic job. You are at Del Mar. I'm just curious, are there any questions, or what are you seeing in terms of the preparation going on for this event?
Well, just like Keeneland, they are putting in a lot of temporary structures. There's a couple of huge marquees at the top of the stretch. They're putting in temporary boxes in front of the grandstand, in front of the regular boxes, which Santa Anita has also done. But they're following, they're kind of using the playbook that Keeneland and Breeders' Cup used 2 years ago, and that's use remote parking lots, limit general attendance in certain areas where the walkarounds cannot get into the box areas, which you could do during the regular meeting here. So if it's anything like Keeneland, which I thought was just tremendously well run, this is going to be a successful Breeders' Cup. Anybody that comes here with a seat is going to, it's not going to be overcrowded. We know that. Opening day here, as you know, you've been here, can be a mess. The place is just packed, and they're limiting attendance. But again, importantly, they're limiting who can get into what areas, and I think that's going to make for a really good Breeders' Cup. So if they can do anywhere near as well as Keeneland did, it's going to be a great Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, logistically, in terms of the races and the racetrack, that's another subject, which is this is a pretty short stretch. It's 919 feet, which is quite a bit shorter than Santa Anita, really a lot shorter than Churchill and other tracks. So that's an interesting, handicapping angle for sure. And then in terms of the other races, we already mentioned the filly and mare turf shortening up. The turf sprint is another one that's run at different distances depending on the track. It's only going to be 5 furlongs, so you got to keep that in mind. And that sharp, run into the turn, post positions for that race, for the filly and mare turf, for all the turf races probably, are going to be critical here, I think.
Yeah, I think post positions, especially in you don't want to be outside for the turf sprint. I don't think you want to be outside for the filly and mare turf. The classic should be fine. If the only post position that really matters there is where is Gunrunner going to be. He's going to have to watch out for the Baffert horses. But the thing about the main track here is that it was brand new this summer, and the track, according to people who have raced over it in the past, can change from the summer to fall. So as we go into the opening day of the meeting, which is just a couple days before the Breeders' Cup, it'll be interesting to see how the track plays, whether it favors speed, closers, inside, outside. It went through some changes this summer, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays for the Breeders' Cup.
Final storyline, always at this time of year, we start thinking about the 3-year-old season. Who will be the stars? Who will be the favorites for the Kentucky Derby? This year, it is pretty much a slam dunk right now as to who is going to be the favorite, depending on what happens from here on out. But I mean, at this time of year, you usually don't have one that's this elevated, and that's Bolt Doro, who ran a 100 Beyer speed figure in his front runner stakes last out and is going to be even money or less to win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I guess the storyline is, how good is Bolt Doro?
Yeah, he's very good. He obviously likes this racetrack too, which is an advantage. I think the only horse in the field that really can beat him is himself. If he runs his race, I think he wins the Juvenile. He becomes the favorite for the 2018 Kentucky Derby.
All right, let's ask a poll question before we head out here. So who do you think is going to win the Breeders' Cup Classic? Is it going to be a Bob Baffert horse, Gun Runner, or someone else in the field? Let us know your thoughts. Take the poll on our website at paulickreport.com. All right, Ray, I'll see you out there in a couple of days. That's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show presented by Woodbine Racetrack. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.